What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're gonna talk about something pretty intricate. We're gonna talk about optimizing morning ambush stand setups in the bottoms.
Flipping away a lot. Our scouting mission got cut short.
Okay guys, before we dive into this topic, I got a quick exciting announcement for you guys. So I just put together a private video on my KillTree method. This is my personal step-by-step process I've developed over the course of many years of mobile hunting, and it is my step-by-step process in every time I find a point of interest in how I pick the tree. If you want it, join the Dying Breed Collective. There's a link below in the description. It's free and it is everything that mainstream hunting media doesn't share with you. This is the nooks and crannies, the how-to, the real world scenario stuff. Okay, back to the topic at hand. So, hunting the bottoms in the morning. Hunting bottoms can be super difficult, okay? With the wind and the thermals and how that all kind of comes together. And this is a lot of the reason why bottoms tend to be ripped up and shredded a lot, because these bucks will run these bottoms. They have thermals coming from all directions and they're pretty safe and secure in these areas, right? They can detect danger. So how do we hunt these areas, right? And what is a good practice and things we can think about to optimize stand setups in the bottoms? So today I'm going to share with you guys a few tricks that I have and tips that you can implement when you find that hot spot in the bottom and you want to capitalize on a morning ambush. So why am I talking about mornings in this particular instance? Well, first and foremost, mornings are my favorite time to hunt by far. I would have to say that 95% of the deer I've ever killed have been in the morning. I love a morning ambush. I love hunting close to bedding. There's so many things I love about mornings, and we'll get into a specific video on that down the road. But if I had to choose, if I had a gun to my head, I could hunt either mornings the rest of my life or evenings. It wouldn't even be a close call. It'd be mornings, like instantly, no second guessing. So anyway, but also, on that note, one thing we're gonna focus on for this video is we're gonna talk about one of the best benefits of a morning ambush, especially in the bottoms, and that is a thermal lift. So for those of you guys who don't know a lot about thermals, we will be doing a deep dive into thermals specifically and how they work in the near future. But as a general rule of thumb and base principle, with the warming of air, the thermals and scent molecules, they rise, and with the cooling of air, they fall, okay? So one thing we can take advantage of when finding these spots in the evening is coming back in the morning to hunt them and using that natural rise of thermals as the air warms up in the early hours of the day. So why is this important? Well, this is hugely important because it takes our scent and it actually lifts it up in the air. Now, this can be a hard thing to grasp and a hard thing to figure out, but when you start to develop knowledge of thermals, there is no greater superpower in the whitetail hunting world because it allows you to really play those things and understand where your scent will end up. And therefore, you can kind of pick and choose where you want your scent to go based off of your setup. And that's how we kill these deer in the bottoms in the morning, is we just have to have a good understanding of that. One of the biggest misconceptions that I wanted to cover in this video with hunting bottoms in the morning, or hunting really any spot in the morning and anticipating the thermal lift, is you don't get a thermal lift just because it's the morning, right? So think about that. I'm gonna say it again, because a lot of people have this thought process. Oh, I'm gonna hunt this area in the morning because the thermals are gonna lift because it's the morning. This is not true, right? So I'll say it one more time. we don't get a thermal lift just because it's the morning. Where we get the thermal lift is the warming of the air, okay? So your thermals can very much fall in the morning, and they do, until the air starts to warm. Why is this important? This is super important because your scent is going to be doing the exact opposite of what you thought it was going to be until a certain point of time, okay? So it's very important that when you're looking at this and you're anticipating this thermal lift, you got to really cover your bases. You need to make sure you have a clear understanding of what the weather is going to do, and that's temperature, wind speed, and wind direction. And all three of those will give you the blueprint of what the thermal is going to do, okay? You may have a morning, right? Let's say it gets down to 29 at night, and you look at the hourly forecast. Let's say from sunup is 7 o'clock, right? So you look at from 7 to 10, that's when you're going to be hunting. The temperature is going from 29 to 37. Well, that's a good warming of air right there. But even that doesn't tell you that, well, where you're going to be is going to get a thermal lift in that time window. It might not, right? Let's say you're hunting the north-facing ridge of a bottom. Well, you are not going to get that in that prime time window of your hunting. It might take till 10 o'clock before you actually get the thermal lift of where you're at, right? Yeah, trippy a little bit, right? But you got to think of it like that. You got to think of it very, very, very 10 steps ahead. So what might be a better option is to hunt the south-facing slope of that bottom, right? It's going to get sun quicker, which is going to warm that air quicker, which is going to give you that lift quicker, okay? So that's one tip right there. So guys, there's been setups where I've been analyzing a bottom, found a point of interest, went through my whole process, my KillTree process, and in the step of determining thermals, right, and understanding the land and what's going to happen, the moving my stand of 5 feet higher in the same tree was the difference of me killing a deer and being able to hunt that morning spot than not, right? So I'm just going to play that back. So what I've interpreted, right? So I found my spot of interest. I moved to the south-facing ridge of this, or ridge side of this bottom. What I was trying to determine in this instance is, okay, when is the sun going to hit this side of the ridge, right? Is it going to be a half hour after sunrise? Like, how much timber are we looking? How far down a bottom are we? This is going to make the difference of an hour, 2 hours, right? All this matters. So what I was doing here is I was trying to get to the closest point possible to where the sun would actually hit my physical person, right? So every 5 feet you move up in a tree or move up the ridge is going to get you closer to that sun exposure at an earlier time, okay? That coupled with where you are based off of the spectrum of, okay, feeding, transition, bedding is going to matter drastically as well, because it's going to matter of when you anticipate having that deer activity move through there, right? Okay, you following? So it's a lot of layers here. So if I'm hunting close to a bedding area and my previous intel tells me that they're feeding a half mile away or on another ridge, well, I got a little bit more time to work with, okay? So the sun can get up in the sky higher in that course of time, to where by the time those deer funnel back or that buck funnels back to that bedding area, I'm invincible and I can be 9 feet up in a tree. If I was hunting a transition right off of food or close to food where I was anticipating that movement of deer being right at sunup or first light, I would not want to be in that situation, because I would have a thermal pull going down in that regard. Or I might, if I was in that situation, I'm not playing the lift, I'm playing the pull. And then I would position and orchestrate my stand accordingly to have an invincible setup in that regard, right? With the dropping of thermals. Okay, so I know it's a lot to think about, but That's my tip number one, is identifying where the warming of the air will happen first. And that's a good, very easy beginner way to be able to hunt the bottoms and absorb that intel, even if it's an observation sit, and remain invincible and not get blown at and busted all morning. With that, secondary, I want to talk about using features that are typically in bottoms to your advantage for before that thermal starts to lift. So let's say you got a little flowing crick in the bottom, right? Usually cricks have banks, and a crick bank can be extremely valuable for access, but also extremely valuable to throw your scent and remain invincible in the early morning hours before you get that rise, right? So let's say you're scouting a crick bottom, and the point of interest is not really in proximity of the crick per se, but you could be on the crick and see that point of interest and still have a chance of maybe shooting a transition to that point of interest. Well, this can be a huge play, right? I did this actually the other morning. So I anticipated and I moved closer to that crick bank to where I knew that before any of that bottom heated up, and this is really good, guys, if you're hunting the north sides, the north facing slopes, or where the bottom bends, toward the north end. If you can identify that spot, right, and use the edge of that crick bank to your scent to fall into in the morning, right? So it's going to be dropping to the lowest point. And these crick bottoms, it's a natural low spot there. So your scent's going to want to go there regardless, right? It's going to fall. If you're on the bank, your scent is going to be falling and it's going to be sucking to that bottom. That, with the combination of even a slow moving crick flow, like a little bit of water in there, it's actually going to slowly conveyor belt your scent out of there, right? That's pretty damn stealthy. So that can be a huge advantage. And then that way you're posted up there for the entire morning. When your scent is falling, the river is conveyor belting it out of there. And then as soon as the sun actually finally does hit you, which is late hours in the morning because you're on the north side, then you're going to get that thermal lift, right? So you're kind of invincible for a while. And on these 2 points too, you also have to understand when that lift is going to stop, right? So at a certain point in time, the air is going to stop warming. And once it stops warming, well, then your lift ceases to exist, right? So you should be actively checking that on a regular basis. And usually late hours in the morning, once the sun is hitting the full bottom, everything's warmed up to proper temperature, then you're gonna start getting some really squirrely stuff going on, because the way the bottoms funnel wind and your thermals are gonna be doing something completely different. So another point I want to cover on that note, it's a perfect transition, is wind direction and speed, right? Well, actually not so much direction, because you're going to use the direction. The direction is what it is. But in bottoms, the speed can really, really play a big factor in what the wind actually does, right? So my favorite time to hunt the bottoms is on minimal winds, right? Like when the wind says light and variable, all the way up to, I'd probably say 7-8 miles an hour, to where it's light enough that it's not whipping, right? The tricky things about bottoms is the way it funnels and siphons wind is very, very unpredictable. And unless you are in that spot and checking it with like milkweed, it's very hard to know what it's going to do. And what it does can change from an 8-mile-an-hour wind to a 12-mile-an-hour wind very, very drastically. So unfortunately, the only way you can know this is to actually physically check and see what it does on that wind direction and speed. So that's where I'm a firm believer that you always need to have your milkweed. You always need to be checking it, especially hunting these bottoms. Back to what I was saying. I like to focus on light winds, because light winds usually allows that strong thermal pull to take over, right? And when the wind is that light, you're going to be more playing thermals. When the wind increases in miles per hour, you're going to more likely be playing that wind and then accounting for like the backlash of thermal, right? It's a good idea, especially in the mornings, to, hunt them on the lower wind mornings. And you always have to remember that even on a strong wind day, the wind will subside. Like there are gusts, and it will ebb and flow. Like it's very rarely a consistent 15 miles an hour all day. And when that wind does let off, even the slightest bit, the thermals will start to take over and overpower that. So you need to have a general understanding of both of them. So where you can capitalize on windy situations is very long, drawn out bottoms, right? With the wind going parallel to these bottoms, which is very good, right? So, and this is not every scenario, but I've found in specific instances where I can get on a long stretch. Let's say it's a straight north and south, and it goes for quite a ways, Let's say it goes for half a mile, right? And you got a nice stiff south wind. Like a lot of times, you can guarantee that you'll have pretty good flow. Where you start getting really wonky stuff is when you get into those intersections, right? Those hotspot hubs down in the bottoms, where a lot of draws and ridges and stuff are coming together. That's where shit is going to get very, very squirrely. So you got to get in there. You got to start to play the height and the thermal pull on those, and then also play the thermal draw. So another good point too on that aspect is getting up on one of those spines, right? In one of those bottoms where all the verges connect, is you get up on one of those spines, and then you can on the downwind side, you can pop off, right? And anticipate that thermal drop in the evening. And then, so as soon as those thermals start to drop and that air starts to cool down, which is going to be very quick if you're hunting the bottom in the evening, as soon as you lose sight of that sun, shit's getting cold. And those thermals are going to run like a ramp down there. And if you're hunting big country, this can be to your advantage because there's so much distance for that thermal to travel down that bottom, in between that spine, all the way to the bottom, hit a crick, go back up or fill up, right? So big country is good for that. Now, small country or a smaller spot, right? Let's say it's just a tiny bottom, can be a lot worse because you might think you're good right off the bat because your thermals are going off that spine and down to the bottom. But if the bottom is only 30 yards beyond you and it's only 30 yards across and it's like this little micro bottom, well, there's not really any more place for your scent to go, and your scent is just going to pool and just really contaminate the entire bottom, right? So that's not a good play. So I tend to stay out of bottoms there in a morning ambush because it's just too small, right? You might want to get higher up, or here's another option, is just wait a little bit, right? So I get a lot of people that ask me on my theory about going in at gray light. It's definitely not because I'm scared of dark, right? So there's a lot of people that I feel really screw up their hunts because they get into the spots too early because they're not anticipating and accounting for all this thermal drop. They're thinking, oh, it's the morning, I'm going to get in, I got to beat him to his bed, so I'm going to get in there an hour before daylight and I'm going to post up like I can't move things, I can't bump deer on the way in. And they think in their head that they're getting, like, it's fine. Well, this can really screw up that spot for you because what's going to happen is you're going to be in there for an hour and there's going to be an hour worth of your scent just pooling up in this area, especially if there's nowhere for it to go, right? If you're not higher on elevation, you can really, and then by the time that buck is any bit in the area, he might start to come down to that zone or work from the top into the bottom, and he's going to get your scent so much quicker and so much further than you ever thought he could, just because of just the general contamination of that area, right? So hunting bottoms in the morning, you can wait, right? You can wait a little bit. Go in at gray light, or go in when the sun cracks, like depending on where you're at, again, in the spot of feeding to bedding and what you're thinking where he's going to be, and get in there a little later. Get in there when when you're gonna be bulletproof as soon as you get into the tree. Anyway, guys, that's my brain dump for the day on using thermals and hunting bottoms in the mornings. So I hope this helped you. Throw me some questions and I'll answer them in the next video. I want to start doing that. So leave some comments, and if you got any questions about this, if this is making sense, like, let me know. And on the next video, I'll answer a couple of them before I dive into the next topic. And again, guys, if you want that KillTree method video, it's free. Just follow the link in the description and sign up to be a part of the Dying Breed Collective and get access to a lot of this really cool, private, exclusive content that we're gonna be doing in the future. So, thanks guys. Stay deadly.